You're watching Live1.tv from New York. We got the chance today to speak with 2024 presidential candidate Mike TER MAAT from the Libertarian Party. We met up with him today at the Humanity for Peace rally beside the United Nations. It was the perfect opportunity to ask the presidential candidate about his background and libertarian ideas.
Sure. I've had a long career in public service and public policy. I was a professional economist for 2 or 3 decades. I worked for the federal government for a couple international agencies, worked for the White House as an economist for a couple of years. My second career was as a police officer. For 11 years, I was on the road in Broward County. We're here today at the plaza outside the United Nations at the Peace Rally that was put together by a coalition of organizations that have an interest in ending the world's movement toward nuclear war and toward aggression in general, and specifically like-minded individuals who want the United States foreign policy to be less militaristic, less interventionist, less geared toward war. The Libertarian Party has long held this position, and indeed everyone who's a member of the Libertarian Party signs a pledge of non-aggression. So this is in our wheelhouse, but it's good to see a broad coalition of other groups here as well. Well, I don't know who Dr. Shiva is, but the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have each left their founding principles. The Republican Party is not fiscally conservative. The Democratic Party is not socially liberal in any real modern sense. The Libertarian Party is the philosophical descendant of the people that put together the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that founded this country on the idea that the government is here to protect your individual liberties. If you're waiting for the Republican Party, for example, to lead the fight back toward the Constitution, I believe that you're waiting for something that's not going to happen. And I would say the same thing about the Democratic Party, that we live in a post-constitutional environment today. And it's because of growing authoritarianism that has come out of the fight between the Republican and Democratic parties, each of which have adopted its number one objective to keep the other side out of power. And because of that, they have manipulated the fears of the American people in such a way as to suggest that they need more power in order to keep those in the other party out of power. We know that's where authoritarianism comes from. That is what has led to our militaristic foreign policy. It's what's led to increasing amounts of debt. It's what has led to a crappy monetary policy and runaway inflation that we've had the past couple of years. And I believe that it's time that Americans are ready for the Libertarian Party to play a major role in American politics and to lead that fight back toward the protection of our individual liberties.
I asked candidate TER MAAT how he would handle the Ed Snowden problem. 10 years after the NSA employee disclosed sensitive classified information, he is still unable to return home to the United States without punishment. How would President Mike TER MAAT handle the problem with Snowden?
Edward Snowden needs to be pardoned. We need to stop with a policy that suggests that information needs to be kept from the American people by the American government. We need to stop intimidating people from sharing information. As you may well know, the federal government of the United States is now in the process of prosecuting a young man in the Air Force Reserves.
Texier, I believe, in Massachusetts.
For disclosing information that was already well known to both the government of Ukraine and the government of Russia. In other words, this is information about the Ukrainian war that was being kept from, in a realistic sense, only from the population of the United States. That is a very strange thing, that we are prosecuting someone for revealing information to the citizens who are paying for this agency that collected the information and is keeping it from us. And to the point, the information suggests that the rest of the money that they have taken from us and invested in the war in Ukraine has not gone well. It has not been successful, that our involvement in the war has not been achieving what the objectives were as they were stated by the White House. And so in this sense, I think that what they're really covering up is an embarrassment because they want to leverage the good faith and goodwill of the American people into collecting more resources and deepening the investment in Ukraine. I think that we need to stand against that.
How do you feel about Trump?
I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I was in New York in the 80s. I have a long history of observing reasons not to be a fan of the Donald. He is a populist. If you are a Republican, if you are a conservative, if you believe in fiscal prudence, if you believe in free markets, he's not your guy. If that's the version of the Republican Party that you see today, you are looking at a Republican Party that no longer reflects your values. If you believe in pursuing a fiscal policy that makes sense for the long-term interests of the United States, you're better off with the Libertarian Party.
What about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I appreciate the fact that RFK too is a guy who does not like the government forcing vaccines down our throat. I appreciate that very much. The difference is that I'm a big believer that we need to get our government out of the business of science completely. We need a regime that honors, just as strongly as we honor the idea of separation of church and state, we need a regime that honors the separation of science and state. In that sense, there's a big difference between a libertarian and Robert Kennedy Jr. in the sense that he is a guy that wants the state to work better. I want the state to work less because that will make the state work better. He is not for reducing regulation. He is for reducing corporate control of regulation and for regulation to continue apace and to be stronger. Whereas as an economist, I know full well that our economy is overregulated, that the regulatory framework in which we operate needs to be reduced and pared back. That's a difference between a libertarian and a Democrat like Bob Kennedy Jr.
How does the Libertarian candidate compete in a system that seems to just favor the duopoly of parties?
I believe that we will play a much bigger role in American politics in this cycle than we have in the past. Come next May, it'll be down to 3 candidates. It'll be me, probably Donald Trump, but not necessarily, probably Joe Biden, but not necessarily. And once we're down to those 3 candidates, I think Americans will take a look at us. I think that most Americans have a libertarian streak. I don't know that they would characterize it as such, but most Americans are offended by the overspending, the over-control of our federal government. They are offended by the idea of inflation eroding their paychecks. They are offended by our foreign policy. And these are things that the duopolistic structure, to your point, between Republicans and Democrats, have supported for generations. If you want a new look, you want the Libertarian Party.
Ron Paul in 2012 actually said in a debate that he would completely abolish the IRS. What do you feel about that kind of proposal?
I think it's spot on. The relationship between the federal government and us being one of finance, I think is completely inappropriate. To the extent to which the federal government needs to raise revenue, and we can have that argument about the extent to which the federal government needs to raise revenue, but to the extent to which it does, it should have to go to states, to state legislatures to raise it. Anyone who's ever been audited by the IRS like I have knows that is a weird relationship. That is not a fair fight. And I just view that as wholly inappropriate. It is completely counter to what was envisioned when this country was put together structurally. And I think that politically it has led to a lot of mischief. I think that states are in a much better position to stand up to the federal government. For that reason, the federal government should go to states to raise money. If you're looking for a party that represents your ethics and represents your values, that represents your interest in being able to speak your mind, and a foreign policy that aligns with your values, you're looking at the Libertarian Party.
You've been listening to 2024 presidential candidate Mike TER MAAT on Live One TV. Don't forget to follow, like, and share the video. And join us for our Focus 535 X Spaces at live1_TV.